if you're someone who values the ability to fix anything, having some basic sewing skills in a sewing machine is the exact same as having some basic welding skills and a welder. What is up, Buck? I am Doug with D&E in the Garage. This is a sewing machine, and as promised, today we're gonna go over some tips and tricks for the driveway monkey, the garage DIYer, the Mr. Fix-It, on some basics on operation of a sewing machine. I know, that's a tough one. Hear me out for a second, because I've done some pretty cool stuff with a sewing machine that I just wasn't gonna be able to do otherwise. Use a lot of found materials, like cut-offs from really nice seats in the junkyard. This is from an Overland Grand Cherokee. Recycle old jeans or dirt cheap fleece that you can get at Walmart. I make stuff like tool bags. This right here, yes, it's basically a Jeep purse. But it's for me to use in the junkyard. I have to carry around as many tools as I can. I can kind of just put my socket set in here, sling it on the back. Don't even have to think about it all day. It's right here, I'm not gonna put it down and lose it. I even use an old WJ seatbelt as the shoulder strap. And if walking around the junkyard with your sockets in a Jeep purse isn't your thing, you might remember my last video where we customized the headliner and the visors in this first gen Dodge Dakota. The visors couldn't be done without the sewing machine. That's kind of what prompted this whole video. And before you give me no end of grief about this headliner choice, I got executive producers, tiny ones, little girls. They sit in the back of the truck. I'm trying desperately to get them into cars and trucks and not, well, horses, because we live in horse country and I can't afford that. But I could afford if they got into old trucks. So the headliner is for the 6-year-old who's really into unicorns and the color purple and light blue together. Outside of that, there's no end of repairs that you can make to things like clothing. You got favorite shirt, favorite sweatshirt, your rip. I've repaired tool bags that I wore holes in the bottom through. Point is, if you can afford to buy everything new, this video probably isn't for you, but if you're the kind of guy that occasionally has to make do with what you've got already, you should probably have some darn sewing skills. It's time. It's time. Sit down. We're going to get into it. I'll make it as short, easy, and painless as we possibly can. Let's start with an introduction to the machine. This right here is a bog standard Kenmore unit. She's new to me. Got her on Marketplace for $35. Additionally, you can go new. Kenmore, Brother, and Singer all make really good beginner machines. There's a bunch of no-name stuff on Slamazon as well. I did find this Brother that I'm going to leave a link to. It's about $129. If I was going to buy new, this Brother that I found on Amazon is probably the guy that I would go with, but you get much more bang for your buck chasing down a nice Kenmore unit on Marketplace or Craigslist. The key is, don't buy a specialty machine. You're not doing auto upholstery, you're not doing embroidery, you're not doing marine vinyl seats. Just get a bog standard tabletop sewing machine. Now, as far as operation goes, they use a foot pedal, plugs into the side, plugs into the wall. No big deal. On-off switch. They're all going to have some controls over here, and this is basically designed to set up your width, length, and style of stitch. Keep it simple, stupid. You really don't need any of this. Seriously, you're gonna look at it and it's all gonna be Greek. Here's what, just set your machine up like this and leave it. So this machine can do crazy stretch stitches like this zigzag one, or this castellated one, or this weird heartbeat one, or even gnarlier ones like this stuff down here. I don't even know necessarily what you would exactly use that for. But basically what you want is a 6, 7, or 8, any one of those that's just your straight stitch, so you don't have to worry about width at all. You're really only worrying about length, all right? And that's going to be the distance between the stitches. For instance, on this jeans, there's a very small length between stitches. And then you can see on something like this floor mat, there's real wide stitches on the piping on the side because you didn't need as much holding power. That's really what you're getting down to. Stitches per inch, more stitches per inch, more strength. That's the kind of stuff you'll have to decide based on your project. So you switch these things with the dials on the side. We're going to leave our length right at, let's leave it at 2. That's pretty good length. Width doesn't really matter in this situation. This right here is where you would adjust your different stitch. So on this machine, what you do is you pick a number. That number corresponds with a type of stitch. We're just going to leave it at 6, no width, length. Alrighty, while we're looking at the machine, before we get started, got a couple more things for you. This right here is called the foot. It's what guides your fabric, and it can be dropped down via this leather. All right, additionally, you're going to have a reverse button right here. Purpose of that little guy is to lock your stitches. Additionally, a lot of machines will come with like a little compartment right here where you can carry, this is tools and spare parts and different feet. I've got some spare needles, because there are different size needles. If you're ever sewing, like let's say you're sewing into this leather and you keep bending and breaking needles, we'll go get a thicker one. This is really useful. You can keep your stitch ripper in there, spare bobbins, whatever you need. When you're sewing with a sewing machine, you have to load thread into two places. Your main spool of thread is going to be on top. It just sort of sits on a dowel like this. And then there's your bobbin. Your bobbin is underneath your needle, and it's what actually ties around this to make a stitch so that you're tied from both sides. Now, to get a bobbin, you need to make a bobbin. And to do that, you need one of these guys right here. This is a bobbin spool. You can buy them at Wally World in the crafting section, or Michael's or Joann's Fabrics. What you're essentially gonna do is find this little piece on top of your machine. On most machines, it can actually slide back and forth. That's an auto stop feature. But what you wanna do is turn your machine on and then hit your foot switch. See how that spins? So what that allows you to do is make a bobbin with this thread so that you know your bobbin and thread are always going to be matching. All right, to make your bobbin, you got to tie your thread onto the bobbin spool here. If you were in the Boy Scouts, I like using a timber hitch. If not, whatever left-handed nonsense knot you know, go ahead. You know what they say, if you don't know knots, better tie lots. We're going to put it right down on here. Slide it around this guy. This is an auto stop feature. And then we'll hit our foot pedal. And there we go, we're making a bobbin. There you go, it's the auto stop feature. Now you don't have to make a full bobbin. If you're only going to do a little bit, you can just do a little bit, but I wanted to show the auto stop feature there. All right, now we take that bobbin and we got to access this little compartment down here. They usually have a little clear plastic thing. It may slide out. This one has a little button and it pops out. You're going to take your bobbin, all right, and if you have to, find an owner's manual for your machine, but you want to install it. Now on these Kenmores, and most of the ones I've ever used, you want it pointing to the left from the top. See how that goes? Put it in, and then you work it right under this lip right here. Just like that. See? So we're out, we're in, and we're under that piece of metal there. Now this top knob over here controls the whole needle assembly. It's essentially a way to manually circulate your machine either forwards or backwards. As you're turning this, see things are moving down there. Now what we got to do is install our top thread, and it does go over the river and through the woods, so bear with me. We need to move this side knob until this little head pokes up. So you got that guy poking up. Now we're going to take our thread and we're going to go around this button up top, down this slit in the machine, up this next slit, around this head, which will lock it in, back down this slit, and then into the needle. I can sense I lost some of you. Bear with me. It's not as hard as it seems. Thread needs to go from here. It's pretty obvious where the first stop is. Around there, you've even got an arrow. It shows you 1, down, 2, makes a U-turn and comes up, 3 goes around there, and then 4 brings it right down there. Come on, bud, you can pull initial timing off a Chevy 350. You can do this, you got it, I promise. Just sit down, calm down, and remember your 1, 2, 3, 4s. Some machines have a little bar here that it goes under as well. This one does not, so what we're gonna do is lick it and stick it. Get the end of your thread wet and put it through the needle there. Not too bad, not too bad. Now remember that knob on the side. We've got our top thread through the needle, our bobbin thread under that little metal clip that's just kind of hanging out. Now we're going to manually cycle the machine backwards. You see it grabs it? You see that? And you can actually use, once you get your needle out of the way, this clear plastic thing to kind of clear both pieces of thread and pull it up and out. And what you should be left with is this right here. We've got this piece of thread goes through the needle, under this foot and out to the back. The bobbin is around, comes up through this opening under the foot, and then goes out through the back. Now you gotta sew, you gotta choose what to sew. And while I can't help you decide what to sew, let me show you a few basic sewing machine techniques so that once you know these, like 3 little things, you can pretty much do anything. What you do is you take your fabric. This is a cutoff of from when I was doing my headliner there. You put your fabric in. Now, you line up in one of 2 ways. Either you'll have a line drawn on there and you'll be like, all right, I need to line that up, or the machine here has graduations. Bottom is millimeter, top is fractional. And what you would do is line up the side of your fabric with one of them, and that'll determine how much of an overhang. Like right here is 5/8. So if I line my fabric up there, I drop my foot and I start sewing by hitting the foot pedal. What we just did was we made a 5/8 overhang. Okay, sewing machine setup, we've got our basics. How do you sew? I just told you, you can line up with the lines there, or maybe your pattern has lines on it that you would follow. So you load your fabric into the machine, however you need to do, and then drop your foot using the foot pedal, this guy right here. You start sewing and you control your speed. Now when you start, you want to go, and then you want to reverse your stitch. Remember we talked about that backup button? It's literally gonna feed the fabric backwards, overlap a bunch of stitches, and then let go and go forward. And what that does is it gives you a nice locked stitch at the end, so it's not gonna unravel. You sew as much as you need to in whatever design. You can turn like this, or I like to turn, if it's a sharp turn, you put your needle in, pick up your foot. You can actually turn the whole project like that to make a nice sharp turn. And you sew as much as you need to, faster or slower, depending on what it calls for. At the end, you lock your stitch by hitting that reverse button. When you're done, you lift up your needle, sneak your fabric out. You're still gonna be connected to the machine via your thread. And a lot of machines will have a little mouth cut on the back of the foot stalk. If you get your thread up in there, it will cut it. Looks like this. So you're done, you pull it out. It's just easier to pull your thread over the back of it, and then you're done. And you can see we sewed a little canoe or a dagger, and then we made our sharp turn and sewed right back like that. Now, let's say that was a sheath for a knife you were making. Not sure I'd make a knife sheath out of purple fleece, but you get the point. Let's go ahead and cut that thing out. I'll leave about a 1/4 inch of overhang. What I'm showing you right now is how you get nice clean seams. You always sew things inside out. So now we would take this kind of messy, I mean it's sewed, but it's messy, and you'd spin it inside out, and what you end up with is a nice clean seams. I mean, when you do a method like this, you need to account for the loss of size. So if, you know, it was meant to be the size it was drawn, you'd probably have to do it about, I don't know, 1/4 to a 1/2 inch bigger. But you see, that's how you get really nice seams. That's how I did the corners of these bags. I sewed them inside out. Turn this thing out, you can kind of see how it was made. It's really not complicated at all. See, it's just things butted right up to each other and cut. I used a very short stitch so that I got the most stitches per inch, and then I just put a little triangle on here to hold these guys on from the outside. Looks pretty nice. Point is, when you're sewing, you're kind of supposed to hide where you're sewing, so you do it on the inside and then you work your way out to the outside. So those are the basics on the machine. I thought it was a nice proof of concept. Maybe we can make a case for my multimeter today, but first we got to discuss a few other tools that I recommend you have on hand if you're going to endeavor down the road of DIY sewing. You're obviously going to need some decent scissors. There's nothing else to say, decent scissors. All right, you're definitely going to want either a stitch ripper for removing mistakes, taking stuff apart that you didn't mean to sew where you were going to, or I use a little you know, this pick that's in every set, the like weird 16 bends one works amazing for ripping stitches, which if you don't know is literally how it sounds. You just find the stitch and you rip it out and you keep going around until you've undone the sewing. Personally, I like having one of these 18 mil OLFA knives. I'll leave a link down below. Actually, every time I put one of these in a video, I get a question on it. And I'll leave a link down below where you can find this guy, some sort of measuring device. I don't really like these Milwaukee INKZALL markers at all for garage use, but they're really good on fabric. Would recommend. Alrighty, let's get down to business. We want to make a small little case for the multimeter so it's not getting beat up in the toolbox. We'll call that our factory edge. Now, a lot of people pin the stuff that they're working on, put pins through here to hold it. I don't usually do that, but if you're doing a big project, you got a lot of fabric or something that it really is important that everything's perfect, you can pin it. It doesn't really matter if my multimeter case is a little bit wonky. So we're gonna get started with this guy. We're gonna lock our stitch, and we're gonna go for it all the way down the line. And when we get to the end, we'll lock the heck out of this stitch. Alrighty, there we go. That's perfect. That is going to be exactly what I was hoping for. Now, there's a couple different things you could do for the bottom. I think all we're going to do to keep this nice and simple is we're just going to weld straight across the bottom. Did I say weld? I meant sew. And I'm actually going to leave just a little opening at the edges. So this is what we have. It just looks like a square of nonsense, right? Rectangle, whatever. But when you turn it inside out, you end up with a much more finished, because we just went right across, we can actually poke these corners out. Now let's see, does multimeter fit in this bad boy? I dig that. Now, how could we make this pouch better? Well, like I said, we could have put a hem on top. We also could have kept the hem that I cut off here for the bottom of the pants. That probably would have been the right way to go. Just keep that there and then do all this stuff on the bottom. You could add a little belt loop to it. Maybe I put it on my belt as we're walking around the junkyard. You could have a little cut one side so that it has a big tab. Fold that tab over, a button or a snap or something. You can do anything you want. And with the stitches I just showed you and the methods, you can really get very far down the road of DIY sewing projects. Using just those skills, when I was in the Boy Scouts, I made clothes. I made a poncho for hunting. It was an orange camo hunting poncho. And I went and I bought the plans and I sewed that together because I wanted that hunting jacket. And nobody made the one I wanted, so I made my own, all right? Here's the long and the short of it. I put up a short when I was doing the visors in this about, hey, real men sew. And you wouldn't believe how many people kicked that back on me. Yeah, sure, whatever. That's what your dad told you. Friggin', you know what, boy? Come on, dude, listen, y'all are not comfortable enough in your masculinity to sew you up a multimeter case? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Personally, I do honestly believe this. The only real path to freedom that is left to modern man is through self-sufficiency, all right? As we get further down the road of having things done for us and having things spoon-fed and handed to us, quote-unquote, making things easier, the less freedom we actually have. So leave me that comment down in the squawk boxes. Was this your first introduction to sewing? Or like me, did your mother and grandmother teach you when you were younger? Maybe you were in the Boy Scouts like I was and you pursued these sewing badges just like you pursued all the other badges. Who knows? Maybe this is your first introduction to sewing. Tell me what you think. What kind of projects are you thinking about? By all means, don't forget to check out those links down in the description on where you can get a pretty inexpensive, very capable machine and a lot of the tools that you saw me working on today. If you like the video, that's common sense. Subscribe to the channel. Maybe go check out my website, monkeywiththetoolbox.com. I can tell you now, we're done with sewing and purple fleece for a little bit. I need to get my hands dirty on the channel. So this was 3 videos in a row where we didn't do a whole lot of a greasy wrenching, but we're gonna get back into her in a big way. I had to get this out. I wanted this video to exist. Now it exists. We're done. All right, leave me that comment down in the squawk boxes. I cannot wait to see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.